It's 6:12 a.m. on the 7th of November 2025. The Caribbean sky is pale blue, still quiet until a deep rumble rolls over the horizon. From the north, 4 B-52 Stratofortress bombers slice through the morning haze, engines shaking the sea below. In their wake, F-35 fighters shimmer in formation, and far above, an E-3 AWACS circles like an unseen eye. Inside the Venezuelan Air Command, alarms erupt. Radar screens fill with thick green echoes moving fast toward national airspace. Controllers shout coordinates, hands trembling on the console. Out on the flight line, 2 Su-30 fighters roar to life, the ground trembling as they climb into the heat. On the radio, a single voice cuts through. Steel 92. Identify your intentions. The American pilot answers calmly. Routine transit, international airspace. But everyone listening knows this isn't routine. The formation is too tight, the altitude too deliberate, the silence too heavy. Both sides hold their breath. One wrong move, and the calm Caribbean morning could turn into something else entirely. What happened that morning wasn't random. The skies over the Caribbean have become one of the tensest flashpoints in the Western Hemisphere. The B-52 seconds weren't there for show. They were part of what Washington calls a strategic deterrence patrol, a message meant not only for Caracas but for Moscow and Beijing too. The location mattered. Just off the Venezuelan coast lies the Essequibo region, a territory rich in oil that Venezuela claims as its own. Nearby, Guyana, supported by American energy companies, has begun drilling. That's why this air route was chosen. It skirts the outer edge of Venezuelan radar coverage, right where civilian and military air corridors overlap. Every blip on the radar there carries weight. A small move can shift the balance of pride and power. For the United States, this flight was a reminder that strategic reach still defines dominance. The B-52, though old, remains the longest-serving bomber in history, able to carry precision weapons, cruise missiles, and even nuclear payloads, staying airborne for over 20 hours with mid-air refueling. Flying that close to a disputed zone sends a simple message: we can be here anytime, without permission. For Venezuelan commanders, it was humiliation mixed with duty. They could see the bombers but couldn't stop them. Their S-300 missile systems, bought from Russia, were powerful on paper but nearly useless against targets that never crossed the line. The choice was clear: stay silent and look weak, or react and risk disaster. In Washington, officials called it a routine patrol. In Caracas, it felt like a test of sovereignty. Every second that passed without contact was a psychological victory for one side and a slow burn for the other. The Caribbean that morning wasn't just a sea, it was a chessboard, and every radar ping was a move. At 6:10 a.m., the first radar trace appeared on Venezuelan screens, thick, slow-moving, and unmistakable. Within seconds, more contacts followed, forming a tight pattern moving south at high altitude. The command center lit up. Officers barked coordinates, runners relayed updates, and the base commander gave a sharp order: launch intercept. Outside, heat shimmered on the tarmac as 2 Su-30 Mk2 fighters roared down the runway, engines thundering like distant explosions. They climbed into the Caribbean sky, slicing through thin clouds as the city below watched in silence. From the tower, a radar technician whispered, "Too high. 9,000 meters, maybe more." Over the open channel, Steel 92, the B-52 leader, spoke calmly, "Maintaining altitude, no deviation. International airspace." The tone was flat, deliberate, like reading a script everyone already knew. The Venezuelan pilots could now see the massive bombers glinting silver in the early Sunday. Each one could carry dozens of precision weapons. They knew they couldn't win a direct fight, yet pride kept them climbing. The two sides moved in parallel, close enough to watch but far enough to avoid disaster. Inside the E-3 AWACS operators leaned over glowing screens. Every signal, every heartbeat of radar return was logged. The EA-18G Growler tested frequencies with microsecond pulses, short enough to slip under the noise. "We've got their band," said one officer quietly. In the Venezuelan command bunker, radar screens blinked. A strange pulse appeared, then vanished. They knew it was electronic probing, but held their fire. "Don't react," a commander warned. "They're watching for a mistake." On shore, people near La Guaira saw white trails drawing perfect lines across the blue. Some said it was training. Others said it was a warning. For soldiers and citizens alike, the sky had become a stage 1 move away from chaos. The first response had begun not with missiles, but with silence heavy enough to rattle the nerves of both sides. If you think America's calm was the true weapon that morning, press 1. If you believe Venezuela's restraint showed real courage, press 9. As the bombers held course, the Caribbean sky tightened like a drum. 4 B-52 seconds moved into a diamond formation, their shadows slicing through the clouds. Behind them, 2 KC-135 tankers circled slowly, ready to feed the giants above. It looked calm, but beneath that calm was raw tension. Inside the Venezuelan command room, the air felt electric. "They're closing the arc," a radar officer said, tracing a line near the northern defense zone. It wasn't a violation yet, but the line was razor thin. "Keep them in sight," the general ordered. "No fire unless they cross." At 30,000 feet, 2 Su-32s mirrored the bombers, keeping perfect distance. The Venezuelan pilots stayed focused, but fuel warnings blinked red. "We can't shadow forever," one said. "Then make it count," his wingman replied. Inside Steel 92, the B-52 leader leaned forward. "They're holding their nerve," he said. The co-pilot nodded. "So are we." On radar, the Su-32s glowed at the edge of range, close enough to provoke, far enough to avoid blame. It was pressure without firepower, control through calm. The EA-18G Growler crew began their test, sending a short electronic pulse to feel the enemy's sensors. On the ground, Venezuelan radar flickered a flash, then stable again. "Interference detected," said an operator. "Don't react," the colonel warned. "They want proof we're scared." Meanwhile, the E-3 AWACS logged every response, every pause, every second it took for Venezuela's systems to recover. Reaction window, 7 seconds, an analyst said. Enough to plan around, enough to win if it ever turned real. Down below, civilians near La Guaira and Puerto Cabello looked up, filming trails cutting across the blue. Rumors flooded the internet. American bombers near Caracas. Airspace alert. The world watched the tension rise. Above it all, the bombers held steady, flying like machines built to test human patience. The Su-32s held their line. One move too sharp, and the Caribbean could turn into fire. The escalation had reached its peak, no shots fired. Yet every pilot felt seconds from war. If you were up there, would you hold your fire or strike first? Press 1 or 9 and tell us. At 7:42 a.m., something changed. On Venezuelan radar, faint echoes began to appear high above the B-52 formation, tiny blips that flickered in and out like static. Multiple unknowns. Altitude 20 kilometers, a technician reported. The commander frowned. Drones? No one could confirm. The radar feed froze for half a second, then cleared, nothing there. But those 2 seconds were enough to raise questions that no one could answer. Inside the E-3 AWACS, an operator marked a note in the log. Unidentified signatures detected. He didn't call it a malfunction. He knew better. Up in the thin air, something else was flying. Not visible, not traceable, but real. Intelligence later hinted at RQ-180 stealth drones, invisible to conventional radar, gliding far above the main group. Their mission: to map every radar emission, every response time, and every frequency Venezuela dared to use that day. If true, it meant the B-52s weren't alone, they were bait. The real eyes were flying 20,000 meters higher, quietly recording an entire nation's air defense network. On the Venezuelan side, officers stared at blank screens. "It's gone," one whispered. "It didn't vanish," replied another. "We just can't see it." They knew what that meant. The Americans hadn't come to fight. They'd come to learn. Later that morning, the data from those drones would confirm every radar weakness, every blind zone near the northern coast. For Venezuela, that was the true hit. No explosion, no smoke, just exposure. And while the world debated whether the B-52 flight was a show of strength or a provocation, the real operation was already complete. The Caribbean sky had become a laboratory, and Venezuela was the experiment. If you think those invisible drones were the real weapon that day, press 1. If you believe it was all just psychological warfare, press 9. At 8:05 a.m., Steel 92, the lead B-52, began a slow descent to 7,000 meters. The sudden drop triggered alarms in the Venezuelan command center. "They're losing altitude," shouted an officer. "Check course." Within seconds, the answer came. The bomber was still in international airspace, but barely. 2 Su-30s were ordered to intercept. "Shadow and warn," came the command. The fighters roared upward, slicing through clouds until the massive gray bomber filled their view. Over the radio, one pilot called out, "Unidentified aircraft, you are approaching restricted airspace. Adjust course immediately." The American voice replied, calm and steady, "This is Steel 92, maintaining lawful flight in international airspace." Then silence, cold and heavy. For several tense minutes, the Su-30s flew beside the B-52, close enough to see the wings flex with every vibration. Inside the bomber, the crew stayed motionless. "They're close," the navigator said softly. "Let them watch," replied the pilot. In the Venezuelan control room, radar dots converged. "If they cross, we respond," barked the general. "If they fire, we end it." But the bomber didn't cross. Instead, it banked north in a slow, deliberate arc, engines rumbling like thunder. The relief that followed was thin, too quiet, too controlled. Then, high above, faint new returns appeared again, 3 unknown contacts at impossible altitude. "Those ghosts are back," said a technician. No one spoke. They all knew what it meant. Later leaks confirmed it. The Americans had launched high-altitude stealth drones invisible to most radar, recording every reaction of Venezuela's defense systems. The bomber's descent had been bait. The drones were the eyes. By the time Venezuela realized it, the US had already mapped their radar frequencies and response times. No missiles, no smoke, just data. As Steel 92 climbed back to altitude, the radio crackled once. "Mission complete, RTB." The sky fell silent again, but the tension lingered. The climax wasn't fire, it was knowledge. The battle had never been about weapons. It was about who learned first. If you think the real victory belonged to the side that stayed calm, press 1. If you believe Venezuela should have acted, press 9. By midday, the bombers were gone. The radar screens cleared, and the Venezuelan pilots returned to base in silence. On the ground, tension still hung in the air, no one was celebrating. The official line from Caracas was simple: there was no violation. But everyone inside the command center knew the truth. The Americans had come close enough to test every system, every decision, every nerve. Hours later, satellite photos confirmed what intelligence analysts already suspected. The RQ-180 drones had mapped the entire northern defense network of Venezuela. Every radar gap, every blind zone, every delay was recorded in seconds. No missile had been fired, yet an entire playbook had been taken. In Washington, officials called the mission a routine patrol. Inside the Pentagon, it was logged under a classified name, Operation Caribbean Shield. A quiet success? No headlines, no damage, just knowledge gained. For Venezuela, the shock came slowly. Engineers spent days recalibrating radar systems, adjusting frequencies, and checking for electronic leaks. But the damage was invisible, irreversible. They realized they had shown too much how they think, how they react, and how long it takes. In Moscow, defense advisors demanded answers. In Beijing, analysts took notes. The world had just seen a 70-year-old bomber outthink modern air defenses. The message was unmistakable. The US still controls the sky. The Caribbean, once a calm sea of trade routes, had turned into the new stage of power politics. Every coastal radar, every military base, every flight path now carried hidden meaning. That night, Steel 92 and its crew landed back at Barksdale Air Force Base. Their mission debrief was short. No medals, no speeches, just one quiet sentence from the commander. They blinked. The aftermath proved that power isn't just in missiles or speed, it's in patience, precision, and perception. If you believe this was a warning shot to the world, press 1. If you think it was only the beginning of something bigger, press 9.